everybody. This one is about how the 14th Amendment is unconstitutional. Yes, that's right. You heard it right. You heard it here. It's unconstitutional. This is the first paragraph in the 14th Amendment. It's actually quite lengthy. All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States. That's 14th Amendment, Section 1. It's actually a revision. That's why it's called a so-called 14th Amendment. The wide and diverse range of subject matters proposed to be voted upon and the revisional effect which it would be necessarily have in our basic plan of government. The proposal is offered as a single amendment, but it obviously is multifarious. It does not give the people an opportunity to express approval or disapproval severally as to each major change suggested. And that's McFadden versus Jordan, 196 P2D 787. This is what an amendment is supposed to be, okay? Includes only the power to amend any section in such a manner that such amendment, if approved, would be complete within itself, relate to one subject, and not substantially affect any other section of articles of the Constitution, or require further amendments to the Constitution to accomplish its purpose. And that's Adams versus Gunter, 238 South 2D 824, Florida, 1970. Now let's go into what the 14th Amendment does. It violates the preamble, which defines the whole intent of all the powers granted to Congress by introducing a foreign member into the sovereign body. It is an ex post facto law, punishing Southerners in many ways for acts not necessarily illegal at the time of their commission. This is taken from the non-ratification of the 14th Amendment by Judge A.H. Ellett, a Utah Supreme Court, in the case Diet versus Turner, which is at 439 P2D 266, and so 1968. And I've got a bunch of them that are taken from this, by the way. It's a bill of attainder in its lesser form of a bill of pains and penalties, depriving all Southern slaveholders of property without trial. It deprived Southerners of property by unreasonable seizure and without just compensation, bringing Congress beyond the limitations set out by the 4th and 5th Articles of the Amendment. It lays prohibitions upon the states beyond those known to the original Constitution of the United States and makes inroads upon the constitutions of the several states, encroaching upon the sovereignty belonging to the people of the several states, which is prohibited by the 10th Article and Amendment, the Bill of Rights. It created purely legislative tribunals without respect to the separation of powers, okay? And we'll talk about some of this stuff. We're going to show all sorts of evidence of it. It extended Congress martial law powers by allowing the emission of bills of credit. Okay? So this is all found in the non-ratification of the 14th Amendment by Judge A.H. Ellett to the Utah Supreme Court, which is also in the case Diet versus Turner. So the so-called 14th Amendment changes property rights, civil rights, citizenship, taxes, apportionment, the debt, much more, okay? It's a revision, okay? And Congress does not have the authority to revise the Constitution, and they're just calling it an amendment, which is typical of what these Satanists do, and so it's unconstitutional. There's the bills of credit right here. The forced loans of 1862 and 1863 in the form of legal tender notes were vital forces in the struggle for national supremacy. They form a part of the public debt of the United States, the validity of which is solemnly established by the 14th Amendment to the Constitution. That's U.S. Supreme Court, Juilliard versus Greenman. And so, again, those forced loans they're talking about are U.S. Treasury notes, but their legal tender and Federal Reserve notes are the same thing. They're also legal tender. And so their bills of credit is what they are. So when you buy something with a Federal Reserve note, you're buying it with United States credit. That's what you're doing with a $20 credit note. United States credit drawn on the privately held Federal Reserve Bank. The 14th Amendment was not ratified properly. The dissenting opinion asserts that the 14th Amendment is a part of the Constitution of the United States. While this same assertion has been made by the United States Supreme Court, that court has never held that the amendment was legally adopted. I cannot believe that any court in full possession of its faculties could honestly hold that the amendment was properly approved and adopted. And that's State versus Phillips. And while the 14th Amendment does not create a national citizenship, it has the effect of making that citizenship paramount and dominant instead of derivative and dependent upon state citizenship. Okay, so prior to the 14th Amendment, the federal citizenship was derivative and dependent upon state citizenship, and after the 14th Amendment, it was paramount and dominant. And that's Colgate versus Harvey, again, U.S. Supreme Court. And so it turned citizenship in America into the opposite of what the founding fathers intended, and that's talked about in United States versus Rhodes. The amendment reversed and annulled the original policy of the Constitution. Okay, it's unconstitutional. They changed all sorts of things. It's evidence that they, U.S. citizens, have not political rights, which are vested in citizens of the states. They are not constituents of any community, which is vested with any sovereign power of government. Their position partakes more of the character of subjects than of citizens. They are subject to the laws of the United States, but have no voice in its management. If they are allowed to make laws, the validity of these laws is derived from the sanction of a government in which they are not represented. Mere citizenship they may have, but political rights of citizens they cannot enjoy. And that's People versus De La Guerra, California case, 1870. So again, that's the converted, the unconstitutional U.S. citizens that they're talking about there. The term resident, okay, we're going to talk about residents here in a minute. The term resident and citizen of the United States is distinguished from a citizen of one of the several states in that the former is a special class of citizen created by Congress. Okay, the only absolute and unqualified right of a United States citizen is to residence within the territorial boundaries of the United States. Okay, that's the only absolute and unqualified right. Okay. The term citizen of the United States is analogous to the term subject in the common law. I'm actually going to do a YouTube video here coming up pretty soon about how a U.S. citizen's a slave. Okay, and so we're gonna go into that too. Because and we'll go into that. The privileges and immunities of citizens of the United States do not necessarily include all the rights protected by the first 8 amendments to the federal Constitution against the powers of the federal government. Again, U.S. Supreme Court, Maxwell versus Dow. Citizenship is a political status and may be defined and privilege limited by Congress. Therefore, the U.S. citizens residing in one of the states of the Union are classified as property and franchises of the federal government as an individual entity. That's Wheeling Steel Corporation versus Fox, U.S. Supreme Court. In our opinion, it was not the intent of the legislature to restrict the operation of the statute to those only who were subjects of the United States government and exclude therefrom unnaturalized residents of foreign birth, whether white or black. That's Proud versus Gore, California appeals, and so they're further defining what a U.S. citizen is. The 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment were designed mainly for the protection of the newly emancipated Negroes, United States versus Anthony. Now, I just want to say here that we're going to talk about some cases that talk about race, and I'm going to come out with a YouTube video about how Congress is racist. And racism is satanic too, by the way. And so I don't, that's what these cases say. I don't necessarily agree with it, but it's all about racism, okay? These people are Satanists. That's why a U.S. citizen's a slave, okay? And when you volunteer to be a slave. After the adoption of the 14th Amendment, a bill which became the first Civil Rights Act was introduced in the 39th Congress, the main purpose of which was to secure to the recently freed Negroes all the civil rights secured to white men. None other than citizens of the United States were within the provisions of the Act. And that's Haig versus CIO, again, U.S. Supreme Court. The 14th, this is a case where it shows that the 14th Amendment converted civil rights into statutory privileges. Okay? And that's exactly what it did. Okay? And so, and by the way, doesn't matter what race you are, you can still be free. Okay? All of this is satanic. okay? And it doesn't matter what your race you are, you can still be free and have all the rights and protections under the Constitution. This is West versus Louisiana. The right of trial by jury in civil cases, guaranteed by the 7th Amendment. The right to bear arms, guaranteed by the 2nd Amendment, have been distinctly held not to be privileges and immunities of citizens of the United States, guaranteed by the 14th Amendment against abridgment by the states. And in effect, the same decision was made in respect to the guarantee against prosecution, except by indictment of a grand jury, contained in the 5th Amendment. And in respect to the right to be confronted with witnesses, contained in the 6th Amendment. Okay, remember, I just read a case that has said the first 8 amendments, the U.S. citizens don't have access to the first 8 amendments against the powers of the federal government. Well, I mean, this is a U.S. court case, and they're citing a Supreme Court case, they're citing a bunch of other Supreme Court cases. The Congress shall have power to dispose of and make all needful rules and regulations respecting the territory or other property belonging to the United States. And that's why a U.S. citizen is a slave, because a U.S. citizen is property. And this is all coming from the Roman cult. Okay? That's exactly where it's coming from. Okay? That's U.S. Constitution, Article 4, Section 3, Clause 2. Residents. Residents, as distinguished from citizens, are aliens who are permitted to take up a permanent abode in the country. Being bound to society by reason of their dwelling in it, they are subject to its laws so long as they remain there, and being protected by it, they must defend it. Although they do not enjoy all the rights of citizens, they only have certain privileges which the law or custom gives them. Permanent residents are those who have been given the right of perpetual residence. They're a sort of citizen of a less privileged character. They're subject to the society without enjoying all its advantages. Their children succeed to their status, for the right of perpetual residence given to them by the state passes to their children. And that's the Law of Nations by Vattel, Book 1, Chapter 19, Section 213, page 87. And that's all coming from the Roman cult again. A citizen of the United States is a civilly dead entity operating as co-trustee and co-beneficiary of the Public Charitable Trust, the Constructive Sesticate Trust of U.S. Inc. under the 14th Amendment, which upholds the debt of U.S. and U.S. Inc. And that's Congressional Record, June 13th, 1967, pages 15641 through 15646. And so if anybody has ever read the Congressional Record, they'll know that that's a summary, and because that's a whole that 5 pages there is a huge amount of stuff. Every taxpayer is assessed to K trust, having sufficient interest in preventing the abuse of the trust to be recognized in the field of this court's prerogative jurisdiction. Okay, so a U.S. citizen is a taxpayer. We're going to see that in a second. This is all coming from the Roman law and the Roman cult. Okay, a Sesticate trust was created by the Roman cult. Okay. Slater's protestations to the effect that he derives no benefit from the United States government have no bearing on his legal obligation to pay income taxes. And unless the defendant can establish that he's not a citizen of the United States, the IRS possesses authority to attempt to determine his federal tax liability. And that's U.S. United States of America versus William M. Slater, federal court case in 1982. And this is Tomlin's Law Dictionary, 1835 edition, volume 2, under the definition of mortmain. Okay, and this is where it shows that the Sesticate Trust was created by the Roman cult. Okay, yet still it was found difficult to set bounds to ecclesiastical ingenuity. For when they were driven all of all their former holes, they devised a new method of conveyance, for which the lands were granted not to themselves directly, but to nominal feoffees to the use of the religious houses, thus distinguishing between the possession and the use and the receiving of actual profits, while the season of the land remained in the nominal feoffee, who was held by the courts of equity, then under the direction of the clergy, to be bound in conscience to account to his sesticate use for the rents and emoluments of the state. And it is to these inventions that our practitioners are indebted for the introduction of uses and trusts, the foundation of modern conveyancing. Okay, so this says volumes. Okay, so let's analyze this a little bit. Okay, so first of all, the sestike jus was set up by the Roman cult. Second of all, the courts are under the direction of the Roman cult, and you think that's changed? Absolutely not. And then they're talking about to be bound in conscience to account for the sestike jus for the rents and emoluments. Gee, that sounds like taxes, extortion, theft. And it's to these inventions that our practitioners are indebted for the introduction of use and trust, the foundation of modern conveyancing. Well, so that in 1835 it was the foundation of modern conveyancing. Do you think anything's changed? Absolutely not. And this is the DC Code. This is Chapter 854. Which was approved March 3rd, 1901 by the 56th Congress at 31 Stat 1189, and at Section 117 at 31 Stat 1208, it says that in addition to the jurisdiction conferred in the preceding section, plenary jurisdiction is hereby given to said court holding the special term to hear and determine all questions relative to the execution of any and all wills. Gee, that sounds like a sestike trust. And then it continues on. It says in Chapter 56, Section 1617 at 31 Stat 1432, says the legal estate to be in the sestike jus, okay, which is a sestike trust. Usufruct, okay, it's a type of a trust. And so, again, think about it. Think about it. We're going to go there? Yes, we are. Okay, think about it. If a U.S. citizen's a sestike trust, and the Roman cult creates the sestike trust, and the Roman cult owned courts say that all taxpayers are a sestike trust. Remember that one? And Congress says that the legal estate in the District of Columbia is a sestike trust. Then Congress is essentially saying that the Roman cult owns and operates the District of Columbia. Think about it. That's exactly what they're saying. Whoa, look at this. This is right in Congress. And look at those fascists that are there, okay? What do you think they're telling you with that, people? What do you think? Hello, the lights are on. Is anybody home? Those are fascists. Fascists is had its origin in the Etruscan civilization that was passed on to ancient Rome, where it symbolized the magistrate's power and jurisdiction. It is a present on an older design of the Mercury dime and behind the podium of the United States House of Representatives. Okay, and that's a picture of it there on the right, and it's interesting that it's also what the name fascist, as in the National Fascist Party in Italy, or the fascist dictatorship that's emerging in the District of Columbia right now. They're all a bunch of fascists. The symbolism of the fascists suggests strength through unity. A single rod is easily broken, but while a bundle is very difficult to break, the axe represented the power over life or death through the death penalty. The fascist bundles symbolize power and authority in ancient Rome, beginning in the early Roman kingdom. The highest magistrate, the dictator, was entitled to 24 rods, I guess, in his fascia. The axe indicated the magistrate's judicial power, included capital punishment during the times of emergency. However, the Roman Republic might choose a dictator to lead for a limited time, who was only a magistrate to be granted capital punishment authority within the pomerium. Anyways, the point being is that it's all fascism, okay, and it's all coming from the Roman cult. Fascists represent penal power, plenary power. Fascists represent dictatorship by the magistrate. The magistrate, okay, this is Black's Law Dictionary, 8th edition. The highest ranking official in the government, such a king in a monarchy. The president, okay, so the president, Obama, is a magistrate. The local official who possesses which power is specified in the appointment of a statutory grant of authority. And then a judicial officer with strictly limited jurisdiction. And this is the 1836 Constitution for the Republic of Texas. The executive authority of this government shall be vested in a chief magistrate. Okay? And so, again, that's where it all comes from. That's all fascism. Okay? These people are Satanists. Okay? This is all coming from the Roman cult. Anyone who's wearing a military uniform is an agent of the Roman cult. The wearing of clerical dress or religious habit on the part of lay folk is liable to the same penalty on the part of the state as the misuse of a military uniform. All so-called governments are bankrupt and owned and operated by the Roman cult. At common law, a sheriff would have a star only and a judge would wear a business suit. At common law, there is no uniform. And so we're going to see some examples of Roman cult Baal priest uniforms. These are actually in the Northern District of Texas and the United States Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit, and we'll even see the Supreme Court Baal priests. And so there we go. There's one of the whores. There's one of the Baal priests. There's another Baal priest, another whore. And there's another whore, another Baal priest. And there's another whore. See his Baal priest uniform there? And there's another whore, another Baal priest. See his Baal priest uniform? And they look so happy, don't they? Another whore, another Baal priest, another whore, a Baal priest. And there's another whore, another Baal priest. And there's another whore, a Baal priest. And there's another whore. This one's in the Fifth Circuit, a Baal priest. And there's another whore, a Baal priest. Yeah, she's in the Fifth Circuit too. And there's the Baal priests in the Supreme Court, okay? They're all wearing their Baal priest uniforms, okay? They're Satanists, okay? It's all coming from the Roman cult. That's exactly where they're coming from. The Code of Canon Law talks about the tribunals. This is only one page. There's all sorts of stuff in there. You can go on the internet and look it up if you don't want to get off your backside and do it. And it talks about the Code of Canon Law. A tribunal and all so-called courts are tribunals except a common law jury of your peers, which is a trial by jury, not a trial with jury. Otherwise, it's all admiralty. All tribunals come from canon law and the Roman cult. They assault you with their satanic contract to sell you into slavery. That's exactly what they do. And Mark Passio is a former Satanist priest, and he talks about Satanists in America. Has some great natural law videos. Talks about the pillars of Satanism, moral relativism. There's no absolute right or wrong. Truth is relative. We just make up what's right or wrong. What's right or wrong is what we decide today, and tomorrow it'll be something else. And according to Passio, he says that 2/3 of the people are practicing Satanists. I think he's being generous. I think it's more like about 90%. And with all these so-called Christian churches that are actually Baal priest places, because they have 501c3 tax-exempt status, they cannot speak the truth, and so then by definition they can only speak half-truths and lies, and that's Satanism. More pillars of Satanism is survival, the highest law of Satanism, social Darwinism. Certain classes of society think they're most fit to rule, postulates the survival of the most socially ruthless, ultimate responsibilities and self-preservation, and eugenics. That's where the elite get to determine who lives or dies. And this is all pillars of Satanism. And one of the big ones that you see happening all over the place these days, and directly related to this so-called 14th Amendment, is order followers. They're responsible for all of the atrocities in history. They just follow orders without thinking whether it's a lawful order or not. They're willing slaves, okay? And that's Mark Passio's YouTube channel. I highly recommend it. He's got a great video on order followers. And he just calls them the way they are. I'll tell you, man, he just cuts to the chase. The World War II War Crimes Tribunals, all the Nazis claimed they were just following orders. They either suffered death by hanging or spent the rest of their life in jail. Some of them are still hunted to this day. The My Lai massacre in Vietnam, they were convicted of murder. Today, order followers are everywhere. I've got a whole bunch of videos of these Satanist order followers. Anyways, things that you see every day using the satanic philosophy of moral relativism are false flag operations. The end justifies the means. Agent provocateurs. The end justifies the means. Entrapment. The end justifies the means. And if you think about it, entrapment is just an agent provocateur that got caught. All court cases are kangaroo courts, unless it's a common law court, which there's not too many of those. and it's Satanism, okay? A judge is a bought and paid for clerk playing stupid and working for the prosecutor. If you don't know the law or fail to do something properly or follow the right procedure, they sell you into slavery. They have no authority. They're unconstitutional. They use their unconstitutional commercial code. No one is bound to obey an unconstitutional law. No courts are bound to enforce it. An unconstitutional act is not law. It confers no rights. It imposes no duties. Affords no protection. It creates no office. It is in legal contemplation as inoperative as though it had never been passed. An unconstitutional law is void. It is as no law. An offense created by it is not a crime. And these Roman cult courts operate under color of law. Color signifies a probable plea, which is in fact false. Okay, so color is a fraud. Okay, colorable, presenting an appearance that does not correspond with reality, or an appearance intended to conceal or deceive. Okay, and so again, that's all a fraud. That's why they give it a nice name, don't they? Colorable, and that's because they're Roman cult courts. Okay, they gotta sit there and play stupid. And color of law, a mere semblance of a legal right. An action done under color of law is one done with apparent authority of law, but actually in contravention of law. And again, they have to give it a nice name, like color of law, instead of a fraud, because they're Baal priests, okay? Because they're Satanists, because they have to. They're sitting there playing stupid, okay? That's exactly why. An appearance, a semblance, a simulacrum is distinguished from that which is real. A prima facie, or apparent right, hence a deceptive appearance, a plausible assumed exterior, concealing a lack of reality, a disguise or a pretext. That's Black's Law Dictionary, 5th edition. And then the color of law means the appearance or semblance without the substance of legal right, misuse of power possessed by virtue of state law, made possible only because the wrongdoer is clothed with authority of state as action taken under color of law. And again, these people are Satanists. Fraud, an intentional perversion of the truth for purpose of inducing another in reliance upon it to part with some valuable thing belonging to him or to surrender a legal right. When one conveys a false impression by disclosure of some facts and the concealment of others, such concealment is in effect a false representation that what is disclosed is the whole truth. Okay, so again, fraud. Silence can only be equated with fraud when there's a legal or moral duty to speak, and when an inquiry left unanswered would be intentionally misleading. We cannot condone this shocking conduct. If that is the case, we hope our message is clear. This sort of deception will not be tolerated, and if this is routine, it should be corrected immediately. Suppression, fraud is suppression of a material fact which a party is bound in good faith to disclose, is equivalent to false representation. Fraud and deceit may arise from silence where there is a duty to speak the truth as well as from speaking an untruth. Concealing a material fact when there's a duty to disclose may be actionable fraud. Where relation of trust or confidence exists between two parties so that one places particular reliance and trustworthiness of another, latter is under duty to make full and truthful disclosure of all material facts and is liable to misrepresentation or concealment. Fraud may be committed by failure to speak when a duty of speaking is imposed as much as by speaking falsely. Once a fraud, always a fraud. This is all Satanism. This is all coming from the Roman cult. That's all they deal in is lies, okay? They got that whore up there presenting themselves as a judge when they're not. Things invalid from the beginning cannot be made valid by some subsequent act. A thing void in the beginning does not become valid by lapse of time. Time cannot render valid an act void in its origin. Out of fraud, no action arises, and any act by any government official conceal a fraud becomes an act of fraud. It is a fraud to conceal a fraud, and fraud is inexcusable and unpardonable. Fraud and deceit should excuse no man. These are all maxims of law. And any fraud amounts to injustice. Fraud and justice never dwell together. What is otherwise good and just, if sought by force of fraud, becomes bad and unjust. Okay, this is all coming from these Satanists. The 14th Amendment converted U.S. citizens, subjects into U.S. citizens. The 14th Amendment gave the slaves another form of slavery. That's all it is. It is just a different kind of slavery, and they're using it to enslave everybody else too. And as a matter of fact, in that Dred Scott versus Sanford, they that the white race was the only ones that were the state citizens, and again, in my opinion, that was orchestrated by Masons. Okay, and so I mean, there's been Masonic influence right from the beginning, and Roman cult influence right from the beginning. Watch some of my other videos. And the U.S. versus Amistad. This is a perfect case that talks about how it doesn't matter what race you are, you're still free. You can still be free. And so it's all in what you say and do. And so in the U.S. versus Amistad, what happened was there was a slave ship, and the slaves revolted against their captors, which they should have done. And they killed them all, which they should have done. And they kept one alive. They didn't know how to sail a ship. So they told one of them, sail us back to Africa. And the guy sailed in circles off the coast of Virginia until the U.S. Navy picked him up, and they put him on trial for murder. And it went all the way to the Supreme Court. And that's what this case talks about. And the ruling was, there was two arguments. The argument was that either A, if they're slaves, they're no different than a dog or a cat, and so therefore a dog or a cat can't commit murder. And if they were free men, they had every right to do what they did. And the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that they were all free men. They had every right to do what they did, and they shipped them back to Africa. And now, because of the so-called 14th Amendment, they can enslave anybody, no matter what race they are. All they need is a contract under their satanic law merchant. It doesn't matter what your race you are. All they need is a contract, and this is a U.S. Supreme Court case. It is impossible to prove jurisdiction exists absent of substantial nexus with the state, such as a voluntary subscription to a license. And all jurisdictional facts supporting the claim that supposed jurisdiction exists must appear on the record of the court. And these BAAL priests, they just railroad you, okay? They don't care about the law. They go and ignore the law, and they just do whatever the heck they want to do. Judges become involved in the enforcement of mere statutes, civil or criminal in nature, act as mere clerks for the involved agency. These people are Satanists, okay? They're thieves, they're murderers, they're liars. They ought to be put to death. Ministerial officers are incompetent to receive grants of judicial power from the legislature. Their acts in attempting to exercise such powers are necessarily nullities. And so when they issue a warrant, it's a nullity. It doesn't exist. If they issue an order of any kind, it's a nullity. It doesn't exist. It's a void judgment. If they have to get your consent to obtain jurisdiction, if all judges become clerks working for the prosecutor when enforcing any statute, if a clerk masquerading as a judge cannot do anything judicial, then think about it, people. All statutes are color of law. They're Roman cult statutes. All statutes have to be consented to. All statutes are satanic. They're full of fraud and deception. These people are Satanists. A code is a compilation taken from statutes, which means that the code is worth less than a statute. It's a kangaroo court. A kangaroo court is a term descriptive of a sham legal proceeding in which a person's rights are totally disregarded, in which the result is a foregone conclusion because of the bias of the court or other tribunal. It's a kangaroo court. And this is a kangaroo court. This is what they do. You might have seen this in some of my videos. This is a kangaroo court. Here's another kangaroo court. They put them on every day. It's a show trial. These people are Satanists. Here, this is a good one. I like this one because it shows the kangaroo squad out bringing in victims for their so-called court. That's what these Satanist order followers do nowadays. And there's another kangaroo court. The judge works for the state. The prosecutor works for the state. The police work for the state. The vast majority of disputes with the police initiate on behalf of their employer are also adjudicated by their employer, where the plaintiff is the judge, the antagonist, and the only witness are all the police, and all represent the same party. And since there's no corpus delicti, mens rea or act reus can be produced and doesn't technically qualify to be heard according to their own laws, the state therefore is indistinguishable from a criminal cartel. They're nothing but a bunch of thieves. How many people do they murder every year? These Satanist pigs. There's been created a fictional federal state of XXX within a state. See Howard versus sinking municipal fund. That's a U.S. Supreme Court case they're citing. It's a Roman cult municipal corporation is what it is. Civil law, Roman civil law are convertible phrases meaning the same system of jurisprudence, that rule of action which every particular nation, commonwealth, or city has established peculiarly for itself, more properly called municipal law. Okay, they're assaulting you with their Roman law to distinguish it from the law of nature and from international law. That's Black's Law Dictionary, Revised 4th edition. The Bible talks about these Satanists and their satanic Roman law. It also tells us what we need to do if we do not want to be held responsible. And through covetousness shall they with feigned words make merchandise of you, whose judgment now of a long time lingereth not, and damnation slumbereth not. If a man be found stealing any of his brethren of the children of Israel, make merchandise of him, or selleth him, then that thief shall die. Thou shalt put evil away from among us. We, the people, need to get off our backside and put evil away from among us. Some people just need a hug around the neck with a rope. It is never over until you say it's over. Shake the dust of the earth from off your feet against them and their household, by which he also went and preached to the spirits in prison. Okay, so that means that's hell. Okay, that's where hell is, spirit prison. It shall come to pass in that day that the Lord shall punish the host of the high ones that are on high, and the kings of the earth upon the earth, and they shall be gathered together as prisoners are gathered in the pit, and they shall be shut up in prison, and after many days shall they be visited. I will show unto thee the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters, with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication. Well, think about it. What's that talking about, people? It's a whore sells themselves for money. Gee, that sounds like the Roman cult. They'll sell you forgiveness for your money. Many waters, admiralty, maritime law, contract law, fornications, illicit activity. Sounds like circulating IOUs for money. And everybody's getting rich with the fake money. It's kind of like being drunk. And the kings of the earth and the chief captains and the mighty men and every bondman and every free man hid themselves in the rocks and the dens in the rocks of the mountains, and said to the mountains and rocks, fall on us, hide us from the face of him that sitteth on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb. And who is a liar but he that denieth that Jesus is the Christ? He is Antichrist that denieth the Father and the Son. Okay, so Obama is an Antichrist. Now, whether he is the Antichrist or not, I don't know. But he is certainly an Antichrist because he's Muslim. And Muslims do not, they say that Jesus Christ is a great prophet, but that's it. Every spirit that confesses not that Jesus Christ is come in the flesh and not of God, and this is the spirit of that spirit of Antichrist. For many deceivers are entered the world who confess that Jesus Christ has come in the flesh, that this is a deceiver and Antichrist. When plunder becomes a way of life for a group of men in a society, over the course of time they create for themselves a legal system that authorizes it and a moral code that glorifies it, and that's Bestia. When exposing a crime is treated as committing a crime, you're ruled by criminals, okay? And it's about time we, the people, woke up to this. It's about time we put this to rest, okay? We have to put this evil away from among us. Snowden should not be having to live in Russia. Endless wars, that's the Roman cult making money. That's what that's all about. It's making money for their Baal priests. It's making their money for their Satanist order followers. A war on drugs, the war on crime, the war on terror. All wars are really a giant commercial transaction. All wars are really banksters making a bunch of fake money. All warfare is a satanic blood sacrifice to Baal is what it is. All banks operate under Roman law from the Roman cult. Gee, that awkward moment when you realize that the same government that's supposed to protect us from terrorists is the terrorist. If you think this is for your protection, you clearly have no idea what's going on. Can you spot the terrorists? Terrorism is the noun used of violence and intimidation in the pursuit of political aims. This is taken from Funk and Wagnall's New Practical Standard Dictionary, 1946. I have a copy. Terrorism, a system of government that seeks to rule by intimidation. These people are terrorists. There we go. There's the chief terrorist surrounded by his terrorists. Warning, this is the standing army you were told not to tolerate. Ask yourself this: are you more likely to be infected or beheaded than you were 6 years ago? How to control a nation. You distract them with weapons of mass destruction. You deceive them with a bought and paid for news media, and you divide them in their show elections. War is when your government tells you who the enemy is. Revolution is when you figure it out for yourself. This is going on in Canada and all over the world because it's really coming from the UN Satanists and the Roman cult. We own you. There's a bunch of pigs. Okay, it looks like a Greenspan there, and a Paulson, and a Bush, and an Obama, and a Bernanke, and a Rockefeller. I mean, there's a whole bunch of them in there. I could probably go through them all, but there's a bunch of pigs. If you don't give Henry Paulson $700 billion, we'll wreck the economy and kill this dog. That's these Satanist bankster thieves under their satanic Roman cult. And there's a bunch of pigs with their chief pig. Beware the banksters. Thanks for the bailout. Now check out new higher interest rates and our new penalties. And don't forget, we're too big to fail. This is the banksters. How many banksters were arrested? 0. How many Americans were arrested protesting them? Looks like 7,786. Why should that be a surprise? And then there's the Mugga Bank Visa card. You can get it today. And there's a good one. There's a bunch of shoplifters stealing a TV out of an electronics shop. And the banksters are walking away with wheelbarrows full of money. Call them amateurs. You got that right, out of the Federal Reserve. And there's the International Monetary Fund. Europe is sold. Policing, mass imprisonment, and the failure of American lawyers. Okay, these liars are all agents of the Roman cult. So why should that be a surprise? Congress doesn't care what you think. This is a study that was done by Princeton University, and it has public opinion has zero impact on U.S. law. So, Satan's going to be in prison for 1,000 years. These Satanists are going to be in prison for 1,000 years. And he laid hold on the dragon, that old serpent, which is the devil and Satan, and bound him 1,000 years, and cast him into the bottomless pit, and shut him up, and set the seal upon him, that he should deceive the nations still more, till 1,000 years be fulfilled. Satan will be bound for 1,000 years. Mark Passio says that 2/3 of Americans are practicing Satanists. Everything you see going on these days is Satanist. Any so-called Christian church with 501c3 tax-exempt status is a satanic tax-exempt organization masquerading as a church. Obama is a Satanist. Congress is full of Satanists. Republicans or Democrats or whatever they want to call themselves, they all work together to accomplish the same objective. The United Nations is a satanic organization. Judgment Day is coming. The 14th Amendment is a fraud and a nullity, and I know thy works and tribulation. I know the blasphemy of the same. They are Jews or Christians or whatever they want to call themselves, and are not, but are the synagogue of Satan. When liberty and freedom are at stake, your silence isn't golden, it's yellow. Conspiracy theorist, someone who questions the statements of known liars. We now live in a nation where doctors destroy health, lawyers destroy justice, universities destroy knowledge, governments destroy freedom, the press destroys information, religion destroys morals, and our banks destroy the economy. There's a fool born every minute. Are you one of them? Be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, is a roaring lion, walking about, seeking whom he may devour. And the great dragon was cast out, and that old serpent, the devil, and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world, and he was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. And it's all Satanism. It's all fraud. It's all lies. That's all they can do. Woe unto them that call evil good and good evil, and put darkness for light and light for darkness. Gee, that sounds like the end justifies the means. It behooves every man who values liberty of conscience for himself to enlist invasions of it in the case of others, or their case may, by change of circumstances, become his own. If you love wealth better than liberty, the tranquility of servitude better than the animating contest of freedom, go home from us in peace. We ask not your counsel or arms. Crouch down and lick the hands which feed you. May your chains set lightly upon you, and may our posterity forget that you are ever our countrymen. And nobody could say it better than Samuel Adams. When shall it be said in any country of the world, my poor are happy, neither ignorance or distress is to be found among them, my jails are empty of prisoners, my streets of beggars, the aged are not in want, the tax is not oppressive, the rational world is my friend, because I am friend of its happiness. When these things can be said, then may that country boast of its constitution and government. Well, we have nothing to boast about here. With this, the jails are full of prisoners. We have Satanist order followers running around populating the prisons. We have bail priests in the so-called courts helping them out. We have taxes are oppressive. And we have a gang of criminals in the District of Columbia. Now, it looks like we might have someone that's going to affect some change, but I guess we'll see. But if the watchmen see the sword come and blow not the trumpet, and the people be not warned of the sword come, and take any person from among them, he is taken away in his iniquity. But his blood will I require at the watchman's hands. Either you're part of the problem or you're part of the solution. This is my effort to make sure that I'm blameless on Judgment Day. You are now a watchman. Circulate this video far and wide. I hope you're blameless too. Other videos, I've got over 230 videos I've uploaded. Bankster Thieves 1, 2, and 3. Churchianity series. Bankrupt corporate so-called governments. Bar members 1, 2, and 3. Do-it-yourself, how not to volunteer for the selective service or the draft. Martial laws here. Do-it-yourself, no income tax. Do-it-yourself, no sales tax. Do-it-yourself, traffic stop. Do-it-yourself, free mail. Do-it-yourself, kangaroo courts. Copy of these documents can be found in my private group at Yahoo called Administrating Your Public Servants. I have YouTube videos that are videos of private information shares that show these and other court citations that are available for a donation. Donations to support this work are appreciated. And this actually last paragraph is for all the Satanist order follower revenue officers operating in their private capacity, I might add. Donations to support this work are appreciated. I prefer gold or silver coin, but as an extremely less desirable alternative, I can accept IOUs, Federal Reserve notes, PayPal, gifts, checks, money orders. Send me an email for particulars. And for all those Satanist order follower revenue officers, you can put your privileges and benefits up your rectal orifice. If you find this useful, you need to pay it forward. If you don't know what pay it forward means, then watch the movie. And send me your successes about things, because I'll put them in my blog. My blog is sovereigntyinternational.wordpress.com. My website is sovereigntyinternational.fyi. My email address is engineerwin@yahoo. My YouTube profile is Sovereign Living. My Facebook community page is deleted because of censorship on the part of Facebook. And my private group, Sovereignty International, is being deleted because of censorship on the part of Facebook. I have a video about how to hurt Facebook, and so watch that and you'll know what I'm doing. And I have a Yahoo private group called Administrating Your Public Servants. I have a Google private group called Administrating Your Public Servants. I appreciate you taking the time to watch this video. I hope you get something out of it, and spread the word. We need to put a stop to this. We need to put this evil away from among us, people, and we need to do it as soon as absolutely possible. Have a real nice day.